This video is going to be about Chapter 17, Human Resource Management. And now we're actually doing this in two different videos. This first video is kind of an overview as far as what HR is really all about and some of the key things that they're responsible for. The second video is going to be talking about performance management, looking at performance reviews, and also talking a little bit about pay. So this video, we're going to be looking at some of the key points around human resource management. Now, the thing is, make sure you read the book, because some of the things that I'm bringing in as far as the video is concerned is a little different and not included necessarily in the book. All right, this screen that you're looking at here, it's talking about human resource management practices, some of the key things that go along with that. Human resources needs to be considered a strategic portion of the organization. If you think about it, there is no organization, there is no company without people. And so human resource management is very, very important to make sure that you find, keep, and manage the people that you have there most effectively. You can see some of the key things that go along with human resource management practices. You have the analysis and design of work. We've talked about a little bit about that earlier. Then there's all the planning that's necessary as far as, okay, so how many people are we going to need and when? It's recruiting, in other words, getting people interested in coming in. Selection, as far as selecting the right people, put the right people on the bus. Getting them up to speed as far as their training and development, make sure that they understand how to do the job. Then you have the performance management piece, making sure that they are doing the job and doing the coaching and the counseling and the things that are necessary in order to keep things on track and achieve the goals that are necessary for the organization. Compensation was just really key. It's one of the things that can keep or turn people away from your organization. And then there's the employee relations aspect. In other words, what are you doing as far as keeping the relationships going? What are you doing as far as making sure that things are staying legal in order to achieve company performance? So those are some of the key practices that human resource management is responsible for. Again, it's all about humans, okay? It's all about people and thinking about their training experience, their intelligence, and things like this, finding the right folks and keeping them there. This is talking about the impact that human resources has. In other words, the whole idea behind this is to get the right people there, keep them motivated, keep them focused on the task, and making sure that you're getting the profitability and the satisfaction and the quality that's necessary as far as the organization is concerned. One of the things human resources does is trying to achieve that sustainable competitive advantage. It really is the people that is one of your key competitive advantages as far as bringing in new ideas and being able to achieve things that really can make a difference as far as an organization is concerned. And as it says here, HR gives organizations advantages because people are valuable and rare. The talent can be very, very rare as far as what it is that you need in your organization. It really can't be imitated. There are no two people that are alike. And when you have key talent in that organization, it makes a huge difference. For example, when I was at the pharmaceutical company, we had some key talent, some really key talent in our, in as far as some of the chemists and some of the researchers that we had that came up with some of the unbelievable compounds that we were able to make $1 billion on in sales as far as some of the products that we had. When you think about the product lines that HR is providing as far as their responsibilities, HR actually has a series of product lines. In other words, the administrative services and transactions. In other words, managing payroll, handling the benefits, things like that. You have your business partner services. In other words, many HR organizations are co-located in the various areas. So for example, you might have some HR folks in the manufacturing area and some HR folks in the sales area, things like that. You also need to make sure that human resources is a strategic partner. They have basically a seat at the table when it comes to putting together the strategies that the organization is going to need to be successful long term. And you can see some of the responsibilities that HR has. In other words, the analysis and design of work. So in other words, designing the jobs and doing the descriptions of them. Recruiting, making sure that what you're doing is you're finding those right people that you have, you're getting them in to at least interview and test, and possibly having to use some temporary labor in order to fill in some gaps. Getting people up to speed as far as training and development. Performance management, in other words, making sure that performance appraisals are done, any kind of discipline is provided that might be necessary. And we'll talk more about performance management here in a little bit. And then comp and benefits. In other words, what are you doing as far as managing the salary and wages? What are you doing as far as incentive pays? What are you doing as far as the other benefits and things that go along with the organization? What are you doing as far as employee relations? In other words, what do you do? Things like, labor law compliance, relo, placement services when necessary, doing attitude surveys. Some of the policies that are necessary. Many organizations have a series of policies as far as what it is that they do as far as the people are concerned. So, for example, what are you doing as far as gifting? What are you doing as far as people being out? How do you handle your sick leave? All of these are policies that HR is responsible for putting together and distributing and communicating to the workforce. Record keeping, as far as who you have, what kind of people that you have, what kind of talent is there, and what kind of skills, knowledge, and abilities are available. Compliance with all the laws. In other words, you start thinking about all the laws that are responsible for people that have been passed by the federal government and also by states and cities. And then how do you support the strategy of the organization? Planning and forecasting. How many people are we going to need? Of what kind of people? What kind of skills are going to be necessary? We've talked a little bit in the past about job analysis. In other words, identifying what are the various jobs and how do you set them up, and then designing the job so that it's necessary so that the people have the right skills and you can get the job done. Recruiting is identifying some of those folks that would be necessary for potential employment. And many times, one of the things that you need to do is go beyond just the local area. Sometimes you need to go national. Sometimes you need to start looking in places for some of the talent that you need that you wouldn't have looked someplace else. You have selection. In other words, how do you decide between a series of candidates which one to actually hire? And this is interesting. This is something that you probably want to be thinking about as you graduate and start looking for that job. These are the things that top employers are looking for. People who can have problem-solving skills, people who have teamwork skills, being able to write and speak effectively and be able to communicate. Leadership skills. Every organization is looking for leadership skills, and they want people who have that strong work ethic. Other responsibilities, things like training. In other words, putting together the training that's necessary. We talked about that in the last chapter, in the development aspect. And then you have performance management. That's making sure that from the very beginning of the year, if you have like a yearly performance review process, many times people think of performance management as just the performance review. It is not. It is a year-long process where at the beginning of the year, you identify what are the key goals that this person needs to accomplish. What is it that this person is responsible for? Throughout the year, you are providing, as a manager, you are providing feedback on how well that person is doing. What is it that they're doing well? What are some things that can be done differently? At the end of the performance management cycle is when you do the performance review, which should be just a summary of the entire year and the things that have been going on. Other responsibilities for human resources, planning and pay benefits. Pay and benefits can be something that's strategic as far as attracting and then keeping the talent that you need. And so when you start thinking about pay, it's thinking about how much are we going to pay? How are we going to do that? What are some of the rewards we want to provide? Thinking about the administration aspect, getting people the information they need as far as their benefit plans. Thinking about how are we going to keep track of all the records that are necessary when it comes to all of this. Another thing is the idea of employee relations. It's making sure that people understand what are the policies and procedures in the organization. If they have a question, what do they do? If they have a problem, what do they do? How do they handle some of that? HR is also many times responsible for negotiating any kind of union contracts that might be necessary. There are a lot of organizations that do have unions within the organization. HR is very deeply involved in negotiating those contracts. Thinking about the policies as far as hiring, discipline, promotions, how do you handle promotions and the benefits and things. And then making sure that you're in compliance with labor laws. The book talked about a little bit about some of the labor laws. It was missing some of the other key laws. Some of the primary laws that we need to think about from a human resource standpoint is to make sure, the reason behind it is to make sure that we're treating people right, that we are not discriminating against people based on various things: race, color, religion, sex, national origin, age, veteran status, and disability. You have the 1963 Equal Pay Act, which basically says men and women have to be paid the same for the same job with the same qualifications. All right. You have the 64 Civil Rights Act. Title VII of that was the biggie, where it said that you cannot discriminate against someone as far as their hiring or firing based on race, color, religion, sex, and national origin. Then you had the Age Discrimination and Employment Act. In other words, over the age of 40 is a protected class now. You have the Veterans Reemployment Act. In other words, when people come back from serving the United States in the military, what do you have to do? So there's various acts that are out there that Human Resources is responsible for tracking and making sure that the organization stays legal. The main thing is you don't want your senior managers going to jail. Again, one of the key things you're doing as far as human resources is concerned is supporting the organization's overall strategy. You really have to think about how many people are we going to need, of what kind, of what skills, at what time. So in other words, you're constantly projecting, forecasting what are going to be our labor needs going forward. And the key thing that responsible for is the idea of sustainability. How do we sustain the overall organization for the long term? And when you think about the individual supervisors, human resource management is not just the responsibility of the human resources department. Line managers need to be involved as far as HRM also. In other words, helping to define the jobs that are necessary, for helping to forecast the needs and provide the training, recommending any kind of pay increases and promotions. That's all coming from the line. It's not just coming from human resources. Human resources might be helping to put together the policies that are necessary, but the recommendation as far as how it's going to be executed actually comes from the line. So these are some of the key points from this part of the chapter for this video. In the next video, we're going to be getting into performance reviews and pay.